If you are looking for tools to help you manage your stress, anxiety, emotions, they're powerful practices that work. If you can really allow yourself to relax as you're doing the movements, you're more open to be receiving these suggestions. There's like another way to do fertility.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining me. I really can't wait to have this discussion with you about mindfulness, a holistic approach, and being of service to the community at large. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Danica. I've been looking forward to this.
We have been talking about it for a long time, you and I, right? I think we met before the quarantine, didn't we?
Yeah. Can I tell that story briefly right now?
Please.
Is that okay? Yeah. Because I recently told the story to somebody about how we initially met, and I love it so much. And I think it was about 6 years ago when I started my first ever fertility support group. It was a mind-body fertility support group, and it was pre-COVID. It was my first ever group. And your book, Stick It to Me, Baby, Inserting Spirit into the Science of Infertility, was one of the first books I ever read on fertility.
Wow.
And the reason why I was, the reason why I was drawn to it was because, I in my former life, I was a neuroscientist. And so anything that had the word science in it always drew me. But then in this, more latter part of my life, or this next chapter of my life that I'm living now, I'm into spirituality. So you had both words of science and spirituality in the title of your book. And so I was so drawn to it. And I loved it so much. And I wanted to use it as a resource for the women that were in my mind-body fertility support group. And so on a whim, I said, I'm going to try emailing the author, never expecting that you would answer me. And I emailed you to be like, hey, would you mind? Do you give me permission to use some of the content from your book in my support group? And you responded. And so began our beautiful relationship that we've had for about 6 years now.
Yeah, well, we have a like-mindedness. I did put that subtitle on the book because it really is what is in there. This particular field of medicine can feel very sciencey. It can reduce the patients to their lab value numbers or egg counts. And I want them to know that it's so much more than that. And so for you to see that, I probably jumped out of my seat reading your email. So yeah, I'm really happy. I'm honored. I love the idea, that message of patient empowerment and of approaching fertility from all the angles and to see it as a personal discovery. I want that message to get out as much as possible. So I can only be thankful that you're doing that with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what led you away from neuroscience into fertility science with a spiritual bend?
Yeah, I'll try to tell the story briefly. Brevity is not my forte, but I'll do my best. So I have 2 children of my own. I should probably go further back then. After neuroscience, I decided that I did a master's degree in neuroscience, and I was studying stroke, actually. I was doing stroke research using transgenic mice. It was pretty wild. Wow. They had been genetically modified to express a green fluorescent protein in their brain. And then I would actually have to give them a stroke and then see what was happening to the dendrites of their neurons after the stroke, with the idea of if we knew where the damage was, we could go in and then rescue that damage. So that was
really fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the listeners are wondering, like I am. 2 things. 1, how did you give them a stroke? And 2, how did you not fall apart, you being such a heart-centric being?
And even as I was saying that out loud, I'm like, I hope I'm not going to get any haters now for the fact that I was doing animal research.
Mm-hmm. Right. On a higher consciousness for good reasons. But let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So I actually inserted a dye. It was a photogenic dye that got inserted with a syringe into a vein in their tail. And then it was a photosensitive dye. And then we would actually shine light on a little window that we would make into the brain. And then the light would actually cause a chemical reaction in the dye, so it would form a clot. So that's how we would actually be able to like localize the exact location of the stroke that we were inducing in the mice. And yes, it was, I don't know that I could ever do such research, animal research on like a human, on a primate or a larger animal. Somehow with mice, it felt a little bit more forgiving. It definitely was hard. But I think at the time, it was just what I did. At the time, it was just, this is science and this is research. Science. And this is in the name of, yeah.
Yeah. So when you read my book, you were probably laughing too when you read that my background was in molecular biology. I worked in a biotech lab. I did a lot of electrophoresis in a room with windows that looked into the mouse house, which meant looking at thousands of mice, mother mice, baby mice, and that was what they were doing to get their monoclonal antibodies. So we had that in common too. So I understand it's a thing and it's our job, and there is a future goal or some sort of end result in mind when you're doing that work, and you shift off the oh my God, what am I doing with you put on the other part of your brain that says this has to get done, which kind of is like what we do in fertility too, when we're jabbing ourselves with needles, right? To have the end result of motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that analogy.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there you are doing that kind of work, and what shifted for you?
So I decided I didn't want to do research on animals and that I wanted to work with human beings. And I also decided that I didn't want to go the path of academia, because when I was in academia, I learned that it was a lot about writing grants to get funding for research. And I was more in the business of education. I was really wanting to teach. I come from a family of teachers. My mother's a teacher, my father's a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher. And so I really wanted to be able to inspire young minds about the scientific method and science. And so at that point, I made the pivot. I finished my master's degree, and then I went into education. And then for the next decade, I was a high school science teacher.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. Okay. And then from high school science, did you find yoga? Was that what happened next?
Yeah. So when I started, this was about 2007 is when I started teaching. And at that point in my life, I had a lot of anxiety. I'd say nearly debilitating anxiety at the beginning of my teaching career, like where I would have panic attacks and I like felt like I was dying. I couldn't breathe. And so I don't know that I went to yoga specifically to help with that, but what I do know is that when I started doing yoga at that time, what I found was that I found a very remarkable improvement in my anxiety because of the yoga that I was doing. That's kind of was my initiation into yoga. And
amazing. High school students will have a way of doing that to you.
Yeah. Sure, it was the students. To be honest, I love the population of teenagers. I really do love working with teenagers. I think it was just my kind of perfectionist driven personality that felt like she had to have like it all figured out in year one of teaching and have like the perfect lessons. And it was just all so overwhelming that I had a hard time managing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking futuristically, thinking, wow, what a perfect setup for being able to assist women going through fertility, where there is that part of them that feels like I'm doing everything right, or if I could just do this part perfectly, or if I could have a setup where I feel like I'm in more control, then maybe it will create the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I do find that a lot of the women that I work with on their fertility journey do have that same perfectionist tendencies. And that's definitely something that we work on.
Yeah. Well, and how interesting or how common it is for that perfectionism to then spiral into overwhelm.
Yes.
Right? And then the anxiety. So I know that your calming demeanor helps them, but now I understand how you got there.
Yes, absolutely. And, I've been practicing yoga since about 2007. So it's a good, just over 15 years. And my yoga journey has taken many iterations. And what brought me to yoga initially was the physical aspect of yoga. At the time, and I still today, I would consider myself an athlete. I've done many different sports. I love sports. And so I really was drawn to the physical aspect of yoga and when I first started. And then over time, what I found was that there was this aspect that really helped me with my mental health and helped me with my anxiety and calm my mind. And then I'd say probably in the last 5 years or so, I've gotten more into the energy of yoga and to energy medicine and into spirituality. And this has been like another journey altogether. I've gotten really into meditation. COVID is what I think brought me to meditation, was the suffering of confinement. So I don't think we mentioned it, but I'm based in Montreal in Canada. And there was just so many unknowns through COVID. I have 2 young children at the time. My children were like 3 and 5, and being confined, and it was such a challenge, and it was really, really difficult. So I started to wake up early before my family during COVID and meditate in the mornings for a good 20 minutes or so. And that was really when I started to really experience the benefits of sitting with myself as a ritual, as a start to my day.
Mm-hmm. It's so important. And, that I guess is one of the silver linings of COVID. It led a bunch of us to make some changes and to add, it gave us the opportunity to add something into our life that would keep us calm, and introduced a lot of us to breath work, meditation, just being with ourselves. It's very important, and to be at peace with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here you are teaching high school students, you're doing yoga, and then 2017 or something, you said you came across my book. So how did you make that jump from teaching high school to
fertility work? So there was one kind of piece in between, and that was the birth of my children. So I gave birth to my daughter Cedar in 2014. And then I took, and here in Canada, we get the benefit of a beautiful maternity leave of a full year. Yeah, amazing. And so I extended that mat leave for a little bit longer. So I took almost about 18 months off. And then I did go back to work, to teaching. And when I went back to teaching, what I learned was that I really didn't like the schedule of, dropping my daughter off at daycare at 7:00 in the morning and then driving to the high school and working a full day like most people do. Right. And this is the grind of, having a family and working full time. And I realized I didn't like that. And I'm a very driven person. I'm also a person who, likes to find creative solutions to her problems. And so I was just like, I'm going to do something different. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but, and at the time I was pregnant with my son. So I knew I was going to have my son, my second child. And I vowed to myself that I was not going to go back to teaching, and that I was going to do something different, but I had absolutely no idea what that was going to be.
Okay.
And so when I was on mat leave with my son, I worked with a life coach. And as I was working with a life coach to get support in deciding what this next chapter of my life was going to bring, I decided first that I wanted to become a midwife, because I had such a incredible, empowering second birth experience, where I had a midwife as my primary healthcare provider. And I gave birth at a birthing center, not at a hospital. So it's like a birthing center here is just a completely different style, where it feels like you're giving birth in your own home. And I had a non-epidural, non-medicated vaginal birth. And it was like the most transformative, empowering experience that I've ever had in my life, essentially. And I attributed that to my connection and my rapport with my midwife. And so I decided, and when I was, thinking about how I was going to reinvent myself, post children, I was like, I want to go into midwifery. I want to become a midwife. But then when I looked into midwifery training, I saw that it was going to be like a 4-year degree. And at the time I had a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And I was just like, I'm not going back to school for another 4 years. Yeah. Right. And so this is what led me to birth doula work. And when I looked into becoming a birth doula, I saw that the training wasn't as extensive. I could do a 4-month online program that then required some practica. Like I had to take a breastfeeding course and assist a few births. And so basically that's what I did. I took that training, and within a year I was certified to become a birth doula. I was already teaching yoga at the time. And then I decided to specialize in prenatal yoga because I thought that would be a nice fit. And then I started to pave this path towards what I'm doing today. Building my own business, teaching prenatal yoga, teaching mom and baby yoga, supporting my clients throughout their pregnancy and birth. And then so that's ultimately what led me to the fertility work, is because as a birth doula, one of our primary roles is to hold space. So we're providing emotional support for our clients. We're also providing physical support. We're also giving them information. And so what I saw was that there was actually a need for this similar type of support in the preconception phase, because I was starting to meet women that were trying to get pregnant and that weren't able to. And so this is what led me to then the school that I did my birth doula training with. They also had a fertility specialist certification program, where they also taught a fertility yoga program. And so I studied with them to become what they called a fertility specialist. And that amazing. Certified me to be a fertility doula and to be a fertility yoga teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just hearing so much of the transformative process becoming activated in you in that second pregnancy. And it's really important to point that out, because I think that all humans are going to be presented with the opportunity to transform or to experience some form of spiritual transformation, whether it comes from a relationship or a life change or a struggle to conceive or something in parenting. I don't think anybody can really get away from it. And so the idea that some people may have that I'll just throw money at my fertility journey, or I'll just do IVF and let the doctor tell me what to do, I think is slowing down their process a little bit. The faster that they can give into this idea of, I need to look at how this process is transforming me and is affecting our relationship or my relationship with friends, things like that. Like it just lends itself to a personal discovery, the mother to be, the parents to be. So thank you for sharing that, and how fabulous it is that there's this institution that you went to there in Montreal. What is it called that offers all these great resources for you?
Yeah, so they're an online school in Canada. They're actually based in Toronto, called Bebo Mia. And
can you spell that?
Yeah, BEBOMIA. Bebo Mia.
Nice. Yeah, that's nice. Great. Okay. How wonderful. So you're doing that and just glowing, I'm sure. Or what was it like? You have your own babies, and then you're doing all of this for other people. And I know personally it's a tug of war, kind of like who and what comes first, right?
It's interesting because I feel like I was really, when I reflect upon my journey now with my business, and if we might say like the entrepreneurship journey or the business journey, I almost feel like it was easier back then than it is today somehow. And I don't know what it is. It was somehow, there wasn't as much, I don't know if I put more pressure on myself today or if I have just bigger dreams and goals, but I just feel like at the time I was just there. I was just present and like there for it. I mean, I still am today, but it somehow seemed easier back then.
Yeah, I think that the more that we know and the farther we go along this path with the women, we see just how much of a need is there. And I think by nature, we are givers or even over givers. And you get a taste of that reward of when it actually works. And then you're driven to help as many of them as you can so that you can be in that experience. It's just such a connection point for women. And it feels like, wow, unlike getting over sinus problems or back pain, it's a tangible goal that sets up a whole future to bring a new person into the world against big odds. It's extremely rewarding work. So the kids, but as that's all happening, our children get older and they have different needs and they ask different questions, and you have to meet them there too. So it is this continual mindfulness practice of what's my best choice right now? What is calling out to be prioritized right now?
Yes.
Right?
Always.
Yeah. And right now, it's us talking about mindfulness, consciousness, personal discovery, yoga, and breath work. So, with all of the technology and science that's involved, I think that, and certainly politics and COVID, post-pandemic, we're all navigating so much uncertainty. And, you and I know that it was always there before, but now either more people know or it feels more uncertain. But we could definitely say that anxiety, the monitor of anxiety, that barometer of anxiety is really dialed up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, is that how Breathe with Lauren came about? Can we talk about that?
But the name, like Breathe with Lauren?
Breathe with Lauren, and what you do with your Instagram account and the website there, because that was what drew me to you. Oh, Breathe with Lauren, and the picture of you holding your hands over your heart. Because to see that, to hear your voice, to know your mission, it brings calm for me. So I want to make sure that we really let the listeners know what you're doing over there.
So I think Breathe with Lauren came about as a kind of product or of synergy between my yoga work and my birth doula work. And so when we were looking to find something, and this was actually the woman that when I built my first website, 6 years ago, and we were looking to find a domain name, we were thinking about, should it be my name, Lauren Enright? And then she was actually the one who made the suggestion. What about Breathe with Lauren? And I right away loved it because I felt like it was, again, what unites all of my work is the breath is one of those elements. Because in my yoga classes, whether I'm teaching fertility yoga, prenatal yoga, or mom and baby yoga, I do focus a lot on the breath and on breathing. As a tool for nervous system regulation, as a tool for digesting unresolved emotions, as a tool for just feeling more comfortable inside of your body. And so the breath can do so much. And when I am supporting my clients, when they are in labor, as they're giving birth, we use the breath as a tool for pain management. And so this is why I really love to, especially with the clients that I'm working with in the capacity of my birth doula work, that I like to get them to practice breathing exercises and movements that I teach in prenatal yoga to help them prepare for the sensations, the intensity of the sensations that come with labor.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so that website then started creating the opportunity for you to work with online groups?
Yeah, so the online groups actually was a product of COVID. And so before COVID, I never, and so at the beginning of our chat, I was talking about the first ever support group I ran for fertility, and that was in person. And I've always taught yoga in person, and my birth doula work is in person, right? However, when COVID hit, yoga studios here in Montreal shut down. So I was no longer able to go teach in the yoga studio. And the hospitals only allowed one support person, right? So people that, have a partner, would have their partner be their support person. And so as a birth doula, I wasn't able to go and be with my clients where they were going to be giving birth. And so I was basically out of work. And I was left with a choice because the government here in Canada did provide us with a benefit that they were giving people who were out of work, a stipend basically per month because we couldn't live. We didn't have income. But I decided that I wasn't going to claim that. And I decided that I was going to find a way. Again, that's like my resourceful, driven personality of I'm like, I'm going to find a way. And so I started teaching online yoga. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have a mic. I had nothing. I had never taught on Zoom before, but I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And I figured it out.
You sure did. And then you reached out to me about the Seed program. And we had that idea to create 4 yoga videos for the 4 phases of the cycle. Do you want to talk about that now, or is there any part more of your story that led you to those videos?
I think, it was really through my experience of teaching my 6-week online yoga circles. So I was doing fertility yoga circles. And as part of my 6-week program, a big component of it was community and connection. And so it wasn't simply about the yoga, but especially during COVID times when people were isolated, it was really about coming together. And so I would always start off our classes with a 30-minute theme-based discussion where everybody got to come together and we got to talk in a very safe space, about the challenges of the fertility journey. And those fertility yoga circles became quite popular, and I was offering them for a good 2 years. I think I offered it 5 times a year for, the 2 years of COVID. And so I got so much experience doing that then I think at that point, that's when I reached out to you and was like, hey, like, how about we, incorporate fertility yoga into your program?
Right. And at the time, I had that idea of, I'm going to create another module inside Seed and call it Fertile Vibes. And yoga would be a part of it. And I reconnected with a musician friend of mine, and she made some beautiful music that they could stream anyway, so I didn't put that together at the time because I went into this track of helping with miscarriage, because during COVID, so much of I just saw so many women losing babies, early pregnancies, and the struggle. And I felt like the need for that was more important than bulking up the masterclass or talking about fertile vibes, because it certainly didn't feel like that was going to be very well received, So anyway, there's a timing for everything. And now we are putting your yoga videos into the Seed Fertility Masterclass. So this is so exciting.
It is exciting.
Can you remember what you put in there?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I did have to go and revisit my notes before.
Yeah. Right. But between the two of us, with knowing of phase 1, when the women are bleeding, right? So let's talk about how you designed these 4 videos for the Seed students.
I think each video was about between 20 and 25 minutes in length. So they're made to be very accessible from a time frame point of view. They're also meant to be very accessible in terms of you don't need to have experience doing yoga before. I'm very passionate, and it's one of my big values and priorities to make my yoga accessible for all bodies. And yeah, it's I think it's important to mention, because I talk to enough people who, we talk about their relationship to yoga. And some people come to me with a bit of yoga trauma, or they come to me thinking that they're not, good enough for yoga, or they just have tried yoga in the past because maybe they've done it at a studio where it was a large emphasis on the physical aspect of yoga, where it was kind of like a bit of a workout, which some of yoga is here in the West. And then maybe they felt shame around the fact that their body was not able to, do the things that some of the other bodies in the room were able to do. And so I find the practices that I teach in all of my fertility yoga classes and the practices that I designed for you in your program they are accessible. We're focusing on probably, not more than 6 different postures in that 25 minute time. And then the postures are all, designed to do what we want to do at that point in the cycle.
I just want to touch a little bit on that because I remember the videos having such a component of self-love and acceptance and just being with yourself in the moment. And I did share the files with some of my patients, and they hit them every single month. And phase 1, they'd do their phase 1 video. And phase 2, there they were downloading it because I'd get a notification that they were opening the file.
That makes me so happy to hear.
Yeah.
Because, and that is a big part of again, another one of my values and just what I teach is self-acceptance, self-love. Yeah.
And we didn't even go into this, but movement and the women on this journey, they're being told that they can't exercise and there's so little that they feel like they can do. They worry so much. Is this safe? Is this not safe? And then there's some of them that have been pretty much triathletes. I have a couple of them here, and to downshift from a triathlon preparation to absolutely nothing, that causes a stress on their body. So yoga is really like such a perfect form of movement.
It meets you. There's, you've probably heard the line, like the practice will meet you where you are. Or there's a lot of things like even reading a book, it will meet you where you are. And so I find that this is true of yoga, that the practice just really meets you where you are. You could be an avid yogini, 10 years of practice, and you're going to enjoy these practices. You could have no experience at all with yoga and you could enjoy these practices. But sometimes it's a practice, learning to enjoy it, like letting the shield down, letting the resistance, being with your resistance if you find yourself not enjoying the practice.
My stint with yoga followed a breakup. And so there was a lot of crying when I'd have that heart center open in the back. It would just hit the crying button every time.
Energy in motion, right? That's the crying, is we're releasing energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go back to phase 1 yoga.
So phase 1, the menstrual phase, we're focusing on postures that help with supporting the downward flow of energy. So in yoga, we call this apana vayu. And so this is going to support elimination. And the postures are also helping to relax the uterus. So during menstrual phase, there might be discomfort in the uterus. So the types of postures that we're doing are helping to relax the uterus, and then also help balance the endocrine system.
Yeah. And I would assume there are no inversions, right? Because this whole idea of we want things to go down and out.
Yes.
Not confuse the pituitary by doing a headstand.
Right. And then in the pre-ovulation class, now we're focusing on increasing circulation to the pelvis and to the uterus or the womb space. I like to call it the womb space.
The ovaries.
Yes. So to all of the reproductive organs that are housed within the pelvis. So it's really a large focus on the pelvis. And on, opening the feminine energy, the receptivity. So I like to use language of, what does feminine energy mean from a yogic perspective? And from a yogic perspective, the feminine energy is the fluid, it is the circular, it is the element of water, right? Versus like the logical, the linear. So that's why I like to focus on circular movements in pre-ovulation. So I find that when we, even movements that are intuitive, because often fitness, yoga can be very prescriptive. It's like, do the posture this way. And so we like to be good girls who get things right. And so we do the posture exactly the way the teacher is telling us to do the posture. But I like to encourage my students to try to get out of that like system or like framework that they're used to adopting to how they do things in their life. And can you notice how you feel in your body and then move according to what feels good, rather than how you think you should be moving right now?
Right. Wonderful. Yeah, that's the receptive mode, right? To be okay with yourself and to believe that you're worthy of receiving and to feel into that fertile potential as the estrogen is rising and they're feeling more sexy and oozy in the first place, right?
Yeah. And that's all of the language we're using, and so this is beyond the asanas, which are the yoga postures. What I'm doing in my fertility yoga is I'm offering language that are like putting positive affirmations or empowering belief statements, like I'm infusing them into the class. And this is why I explain to my students that it's almost works in a way that like hypnosis would work. When you're in if you can really, and sometimes it's hard to get there, but if you can really allow yourself to relax as you're doing the movements, you're no longer in your prefrontal cortex. You're no longer in your logical, critical, analytical mind, right? So that when I now infuse these affirmations into the class, we're bypassing your logical, critical mind. So you're more open to be receiving these suggestions, which is what hypnosis is. So that's kind of my little secret kind of methodology in my yoga.
Sure. I love how you now have brought in your neuroscience master's degree and helping the hypothalamus to communicate to the pituitary the message of it's safe to ovulate or it's safe to stimulate a crop of eggs during IVF. And then that message goes down to the ovaries and turns off some of that adrenaline, cortisol, stress response.
Yeah. Amazing. And that's a big one. It's safe. Like I often incorporate that affirmation. Like it is safe for me to insert whatever you want. But I find that's a big one. Yeah.
Great. And that leads right into the vulnerable phase 3, where they're waiting to find out if their embryos have fertilized, or they're waiting to find out if an egg was fertilized from intercourse and if it's going to implant. So much uncertainty at that time, right? So let's talk about that phase 3 video.
Yeah, often uncertainty, what uncertainty does is it makes us agitated. There's a lot of discomfort that comes with uncertainty. And so what do we want to do when we're uncomfortable is we want to keep busy. We want to just keep moving. We want to keep busy to distract ourselves, right? So there's that aspect of it. But then I also see there's another aspect of this. What I really notice in my students and clients is a hypervigilance of all of the sensations that they're feeling in their body at that time. So there's like this over analysis of, oh, I felt this. What does this mean? Oh, I felt that. What does this mean? Right. And so we're really in our heads and the energy is really caught up in our thoughts. And so for a post-ovulation practice, it's important that it is helping you to slow down. And so not to be, and that's going to be uncomfortable, but that's the idea is, can you embrace the discomfort of, going a little bit slower right now? Can you embrace the discomfort of the uncertainty of what's happening?
To sit in the unknown. Did it work? Did it not work? Did we get any normals? Or is anything growing that's going to become a normal embryo?
Yeah.
Not knowing. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. But also staying in movement. So not to be, so it's stillness. It's a practice that involves movement, but slow movement. And because it's important to keep moving, because moving is going to help us with our mental health. And I think that's the one thing that I see the most in that 2-week wait window is we're just constantly in our heads and analysis or in fear, right? So it's important to move the body and it's important to have the focus be outside of the physical sensations that we're feeling.
Right. And to not turn away from the fear, but just to be okay in the moment and to keep reminding yourself, right this minute, everything is okay. It's as controlled as it can be right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then transitioning into phase 4, for my listeners that are doing the Seed program, they know that that's that all or nothing. It worked or it didn't work. I'm a success or a failure. Black or white thinking, extremes, right?
Yeah.
So how would you guide us through yoga in those days?
Yeah. So this is, I think, when it's most important to really calm the nervous system. So there's a big emphasis when we're looking to calm the brain and the nervous system through yoga. And if we're doing that through the breath, we're doing it through really long exhalations. So the exhalation is linked to the parasympathetic response. So when we make our exhalation longer than our inhale, we're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, bringing us into our rest and digest response. So that's one way we do it, through breathing. And then also what's helpful to calm the nerves and brain is our forward folds. So when we're in a seated position or we're in a standing position and we fold forwards, it's also really nice to put a little bit of pressure on the forehead. And this can be done using props like yoga blocks or cushions, or even folding forward and just resting your head on a chair or on a couch that's nearby. So this is very good to help regulate and balance the nerves.
Mm-hmm. I can see how that would be. Lauren, I think I interrupted you before you had a chance to say what the movement is like in phase 3.
So for me, there's no specific movements that they're like poses that there have to be in phase 3. But if it's a slow flow, so it's that we're constantly in movement. So it's actually promoting the movement of energy and of circulation throughout the whole body, and that we're combining our movements with our breath. So that it's kind of like we're really exercising at this point, the full body, not with one particular focus, but just to really bring us into alignment. Because when we're combining movements with our breath, which I do most of the time, but what it does is it really helps bring our mental body in line with our emotional body, in line with our physical body, in line with our energetic body. So for me, that's the most important thing at this point, is to just be fully aligned in terms of our energy being in balance at this point.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's on par with integrating your parts of yourself, right? And intentionally being in the moment.
Yes.
See, I think I got out of the moment thinking about how upregulating it is to not know the answer to something. And I just kind of checked out for a sec. Anyway, so what pieces of advice would you say you hear yourself repeating over and over to your clients? Anything that you might notice? Like, I know some of the things I say a lot. What about for you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think we touched upon one of them already, was the perfectionism, kind of the thinking. And if I could actually, this morning, I had a session with a private coaching client. And we were talking about her desire to be a mom. And she was saying that, throughout her journey, that she feels like sometimes her desire, it wavers. And that when she feels like she, is not certain, or it's coming back to the certainty, like she's not ever 100% certain that this is what she actually wants. Right? And so then my question was well, do you believe you need to be 100% certain? Because this is, I think, the block a lot of the time, is that we have these false notions, these false ideas or beliefs that, things need to be a specific way. So, in order for me to, get pregnant, I have to be certain that this is what I want 100% of the time. And if it's only 99, well, then I'm not deserving enough for this, because it has to be 100.
Well, yeah, that sounds very much like phase 4 thinking, right? The all or nothing. So I wonder if where she was in her cycle today on that coaching call was more in her premenstrual window.
Oh, interesting.
Just curious. It would be interesting to know, because that's how I roll with my patients, knowing their cycle day, and then I will see that behavior. And so that particular type of conversation, the good enoughness, the not good enough, I don't know if I'm ready enough, all of that is phase 4 language.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see how that could. I'm going to look out for that now, Danica. I never really thought of pinpointing or associating certain ways of thinking with certain parts of the cycle. Yeah.
Right. That's how I help provide the most support, because I really understand the mindset in each of those 4 weeks. And it's related to the hormones. Like phase 1, she's kind of off the grid, because no estrogen, no progesterone. She's literally emptied the womb. Phase 2, she's back online. Her estrogen is driving up her confidence. Phase 3, she's vulnerable because now progesterone is in the mix. Phase 4, those two hormones are both there, but they're fluctuating. And at one point, there's an estrogen spike that causes like a little bit of rage, somewhere between cycle day 18 to 21, depending on their age and length of their cycle. But then also there's this just general little bit of estrogen and progesterone getting out of alignment. And depending on that was this spread or this separation of, am I succeeding or failing? And so when they do acupuncture, I get those two hormones more balanced, and then they come back to like a balanced enough, healthy enough eggs, still young enough, and wanting it, doing it good enough. Yeah. Okay. So curious, what are a couple of lifestyle recommendations beyond yoga and breath work that you see yourself recommending to these clients of yours?
Well, I think they're the typical ones. I don't often work on these things directly with my clients, but what I do like to work on with my clients with is establishing boundaries that and helping them help themselves, establish routines and rituals for their greater good, So I think with these lifestyle changes, we all know that we should get 8 hours of sleep. We all know that we should drink more water. We all know that we should eat, relatively healthy. But it's are we doing it? Mm-hmm. And so what are the barriers? Why is it that we're not? Why are we not? Well, are we scrolling till 11 o'clock because we're a little bit uncomfortable or upregulated at the end of our day, and scrolling is a way to help us regulate? What are the reasons that we're not getting enough sleep? And so that's what I really like to talk about and to address, because I think it can be easier than we think, but I think this is really when having the support of a community or a coach is really helpful, because it just helps us be more accountable to the things we already know. You don't need to be told that you should be getting good sleep. It's just we need help doing it.
Mm-hmm. Right. But if you understand the why you're doing those things is that you're in an upregulated state, then you can talk to that part of your brain that says, okay, only 5 minutes of doom scrolling and then shutting down, or streaming some relaxing music instead of having visuals in the eyes, right? Furthering the upregulation. Okay. Just curious. I know you face loss in your clients, and you're probably in it with them. So how do you help them navigate a loss?
I don't know if it sounds funny, but it's one of the things that I really love doing.
It's a very rewarding time because you can see them shift out of the trauma or the pity of the moment into some sense of ability to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think because I really do love holding space for people, and because I'm able to do it. I think at the beginning, when we're not used to holding space for people through difficult emotions, that it can make us feel uncomfortable because you're not sure what to say or what to do. But then with experience, I think it just becomes right now, I would say that's one of my gifts, or one of my areas of expertise, is that I can really I'm a person who feels very deeply. And so I feel like it actually comes quite easily and naturally for me to just be able to sit with someone while they're going through what they're going through, and, and then letting them know that that's okay and that it's a safe place to do that. So I think it's as uncomfortable as it is. And the most important thing when we're dealing with grief is to let ourselves feel it. The only way out is through, the emotions are tunnels. That's in Emily Nagoski. I don't know if you're familiar with her book, but she talks about, that using an emotion as a tunnel, that we actually have, in order to get to the other side, we're going to go through the tunnel.
Yeah. Well, I know in having known you for 6 or 7 years, I feel like I've watched you really come into that status of a wise woman, and you really can't get there by just reading books. Like, you actually have navigated these women and been further transformed in the process. I would imagine that either your anxiety moments are fewer and farther between, or they just don't have you by the scruff like they maybe did in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Not as much power.
Thank you for that, Danica. And I do feel that way in terms of like the wisdom I've accrued over the years. And I do accredit it to the work I've done with people, but then also just in my own journey. And, I'd say my journey isn't a fertility journey, but just my own personal life journey and my own kind of demons and darknesses that, I've been looking to heal and reconcile. And I think it's through doing that and doing my own, like I never suggest to my clients to do anything that I haven't done myself. Like, I am always I practice what I preach type of person. If I'm telling you that you should meditate 2 times a week, it's because I am already doing it. Like, I'm not going to tell you to do this thing that I'm not doing myself. And so I think that's also what's brought me there, or to this place that I'm at, today.
Yeah, agreed. Do you have a top mantra that you like to share with your clients?
Yes. And this isn't one that I shared today with another coaching client, and she wrote it down because she loved it so much. And it is: clarity and confidence comes from action, not thought.
It's not bought? No,
not thought. So clarity and confidence comes from action, not thought. Because I find that the fertility journey, and I find I just love this quote for really anything when we're in indecision, or we have confusion, or we don't know how to move forwards, is because, again, if we're very logical, kind of the masculine energy, we're trying to solve the problem through thinking. And it's like, well, when we think ourselves into a vicious circle, and we just become more confused. So really it's like paralysis. We have to take analysis paralysis. Can you take a small little action and then see what the result is, see where it leads you, and then make your next small decision from that place.
Love it. Love it so much.
Another one, I'm going to say one other one.
Sure, yes, please.
80% is perfection.
That's very forgiving and opens it up for us, doesn't it? Yeah, 80% is perfection. I'm writing that one down.
Yeah.
I could even add a word on there. It's perfection enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Lauren, I want to make sure that anybody listening or watching can find you for your coaching, your doula, your breathwork, your movement services. How do they do that?
Yeah. So the best way to find me is my fertility specific Instagram account, which is at fertile from within.
Okay.
If you want to check out all of my services and you're more of like a website person, then my website is breathewithlauren.com. And so my services are located on my website.
Yeah, and that's breathe with an E at the end.
Yes.
BREATHE.
Yes.
With Lauren. Lauren with a U in the middle.
Yes. And maybe you could, I don't know if you include such things in your show notes, but maybe you could include that in the show notes.
I just want to say it because so many people spell it like breath with. Right?
Yeah, no, breathe with an E. Yeah.
Okay. So
and one other thing that I would love to offer to all of your listeners is I have a little mini course that I've put together that's a free mini course, which is called my Mind Body Fertility Toolkit. And so
what's in there?
So what's in there is what's not in there. I've included 2 fertility yoga practices. I've included 2 guided meditations for fertility, 2 breathing exercises. Okay. And I've also included a bonus masterclass. It's a talk that I've given on my Fertile from Within framework. And so the idea is how you can unleash your fertile energy using my mind, body, breath framework.
Love it.
And so I can give you the link to that, and then you can sign up for it for free. And then it gives you access to the little mini course, along with the most important thing I'd say is there's the explanation. So it's not just classes. I've actually, underneath the classes, written up explanations of like the science behind why these practices work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Amazing. Okay, well, for sure, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, so send that over. That is fascinating and such a gift. What a generous offering for the women. They really need that, and such a sign of support for them.
Yeah. And I just want people to give it a try. Like, if you are on a fertility journey and you are looking for tools to help you manage your stress, anxiety, manage your emotions, to improve your mood, then they're powerful practices that work. And I'm just in the business of just making sure that people know that these tools are out there and that there's like another way to do fertility. I mean, I'm not anti-medicine or fertility treatments. By all means, those have a purpose, but it's like, this is complementary. Like, these things are just going to help you improve your outcomes and just help you feel better.
Yeah, this is what you can do, because they're always asking, what more can I do? You know, the doctor prescribes the protocol, and then the patient shows up in the way that she can. And then there's the coaches and acupuncturists, massage therapists, all that stuff, all the people making up the team. So once again, it's my Mind Body Fertility Toolkit.
Yep.
I love it. Okay, well, I hope that the listeners take advantage of that gift and go after it.
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren. Well, I always love talking to you. I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome, Danica. And I love this connection. There was a moment as we were talking that I just felt so aligned with you. And I just got this little tingle of like joy that it was beautiful. So thank you for this opportunity.
That's really sweet. I felt it too. It's like we are here for these ladies. So that unites us.
Yeah, we're stronger together. That's what I always tell the ladies in my group.
Yes, that is true, for real. Okay, well, peace out in Montreal.
All right. See you in LA soon, Danica. I'm coming to see you one day. Soon.
Yes. Good. Okay. All right. Until then.
Yeah. Okay.